अस्सलाम वालेकुम व्यूअर्स। आज हम एक बार फिर फेमस ब्रिटिश साइकियाट्रिस्ट, पोएट, फिलोसोफर एंड थेरेपिस्ट डॉक्टर अकमल मखदूम को इंटरव्यू करेंगे। और आज का मौजू जो है वो यूनिवर्सिटी ऑफ लाहौर में जो अभी एक रिसेंट इवेंट हुआ जिसमें कि एक लड़की ने एक लड़के को प्रपोज किया पब्लिकली और उसके बाद उन्होंने शायद एक दूसरे को एम्ब्रेस किया और उसके बाद यूनिवर्सिटी ने उन्हें एक्सपेल कर दिया। सो इस मौजू पे आई विल आस्क डॉक्टर अकमल मखदूम व्हाट ही थिंक्स, लेकिन उसके अलावा भी उनसे कुछ बातें होंगी since it's been a long time since we had an interview with him, and his interview was very popular and people had requested that we should have more discussions with Dr. Akmal. So this was also a part of that series. Yes, so welcome Dr. Akmal to my channel once again. Thank you very much for honoring us with this opportunity.
It was a pleasure.
Now, I would like to ask you about something that has happened recently. A girl at the University of Lahore, a female student, proposed to a boyfriend, fiance, what have you. And they are shown in that video that went viral, they're shown hugging and kissing. I think as a result of the video going viral, the university administration acted very, very swiftly, very, very quickly, and announced that they were expelling the two students for violation of university code of ethics. What are your views about it? I will also talk about, as somebody who's working in a responsible position in a Pakistani university right now in the city of Gujranwala, but I'm really interested in what you have to say.
I think you should confine yourself to questions rather than answers, I guess. Okay, I think I'd like to break it into at least 5 portions. Because if you amalgamate the whole thing, then there are many issues which will get confused and, we will be passing moral judgments or not be passing moral judgments. So it needs to be actually separated. So I would look at the first bit, that in an educational institution which is there to empower men and women of the future, and in an Islamic society where Islam is the first emancipatory religion for women, that gave women the right to life, not to be buried alive, right to choose a spouse, right to property, and ordained, and then of course declaring that men and women are equal, albeit the rank and all that esoteric discussion aside, but there is a main statement of equality. So I would have no problems with that. So the first bit is an empowered Islamic emancipated society would allow a girl to propose. So I would take that and give it a 10 out of 10. That's my stance. So that's part 1. Then the other is, part 2 is that she bends and gives him the flower and proposes. So if the first is right, then the second is also right. She's fully clad. She's not wearing provocative clothing or anything like that. There is no defying of any norms. But what she does is, I look at it in a very symbolic and Eastern manner, that she did actually act in an entirely Eastern manner. So while she uses the Islamic tradition of the woman proposing, the most decent manner, decent purpose, that is marriage. So the thing is that we have to look at it, what the motive, the niyat is. What was the motivation? The motivation is marry me, marriage, nikah. So first is that. Second is that in the West, it is the man who bows on the knee, bends the knee and proposes. But what she does is she is the emancipated, free woman who says, no, I am proposing to you. Right? So that is the second bit. The third bit is where the social, sensitivities could be a bit, sensitive, is that they hug. Okay? Living in a Western society, I probably, have in the last 20, 30 years, been more acclimatized to it that, men, women hugging is probably frowned upon here. Men and women hugging is okay. But our culture obviously is less relaxed about that. So yes, that is something, but I think you should look at it in the atmosphere or in the context of the Women's World Day, the World Women's Day. Because there was this feeling and a sentiment of celebration of women's rights. So I think that what they did was, and youth is always pushing boundaries. I mean, if I look at my youth and you look at yours and, we all look at our youth, we have always pushed boundaries. And compared to what, in my time, speaking with somebody over the telephone, suspected of being from the opposite sex, was, considered totally no, and my mother would give us a slipper on the backside. But, by the time it came to my youngest brother, she would not mind it. So, I used to say to her that, why is it that when I was trying to talk to somebody, you always was threatening me with physical violence, and whereas it's not the case with the youngest brother, that's not fair. So the thing is that, we always push boundaries, and youth always pushes boundaries. And it is essential for the status quo morality to be pushed a little. Now, the thing is that, and this has been the eternal quest. What is, Heer Ranja or whatever, from almost a millennium ago, 800 some years ago, when, Veer Varis Shah, whenever it was written, this pushing of the boundary has been going on, right? So I would say that this can be understood and maybe justified. It is, in my view, it's not only an explanation, but in a way a justification as well, that we should actually be able to understand and justify. So I would say that because this was going on, I think that was a boundary that they pushed a little. And that's where the pushback came, right? Now, the thing is that I do not find any problem with the motive. So that's one. In the 5 parts that I was looking at, I do not find any problem with what she did and how she did it. What they did after that, the number 4, is something where I find that society became a little polarized. Now, why I would say polarized is that this probably 1960s would not have caused a stir. But since the 80s, when there has been a massive religious and ethnic and other sort of, identities being created and the militarization of those identities and the violence contained therein, that is where this has become a more important and a significant consideration. Now, I remember in Government College University, in Punjab University, when we were younger, the idea of boys and girls sitting together and, having a conversation or whatever. And sometimes, if there was some romance or whatever going on, secretly holding hands or whatever, that was the norm. That was not something that was unheard of or not viewed. But that's, a whole time, a whole history ago. But within those 30 years or 40 years, what's happened is there has been this massive transformation of identity. And in that identity, we have to slot ourselves in. And so there is that, I think, a violence and an anger associated with that identity. And I think then the fifth aspect is what the university did. So I feel that university has behaved like an angry, feudal mind, in my view, rather than a reformative, educative institution, and by cutting them off, by saying, okay, today your alma mater, your mother, madre ilmi, your mother providing you with knowledge, will cut off the umbilical cord and you are sent adrift. Now, that is actually an anathema to the concept of the university. What is the university there? So could they not say that it was the university that instilled, if I were that person, I would probably say it was the university that instilled those morals and those actions. I was inside the university and I learned all that from the university and from that society and the university, an island within that society. And now the university is saying, no, I'm not responsible. So basically, this is more of a commercial and an optic action rather than a reformative educational action in which the university says, I'm not going to train you. I'm not going to educate you. They were students. They are students. And they could have called them in. They should have been a disciplinary committee. The disciplinary committee should have held a moral discussion with them, a cultural discussion with them, and that should have had a reasonable publicity. The union should have been involved. There should have been a greater dialogue and a debate on this. The student body should have been involved. And that would have been a far more Islamic and a Pakistani and a more appropriate cultural approach rather than this optic thing saying, oh, I'm cutting you off, you go away. And what happens? There was this fantastic placard that the young man actually showed, and I saw it on Twitter, jab pyar kiya to padhna kya. So the thing is, so my feeling is that basically the university has sadly played the role of the Kado Langa in the sense that, you could have said to as the parents, and when they say, teachers are the parents, and vice chancellor and the registrar are the grandparents of the university, what did they do? Do you bang the door on your child's face or your grandchild's face if he errs a little? But what was the motivation? Motivation was absolutely halal and honest. How did she approach it? Totally culturally, not showing any arrogance or any women's lib scenario, but in reality, it was showing the entirely Islamic liberation and emancipation. So I view it in those 5 aspects, and I find them erring slightly and pushing the boundary slightly. I didn't see the case because I only saw the photograph. So if there was a case, maybe they pushed it a little harder. They shouldn't have done it. But all I'm trying to say is that that was an area out of the 5 components, from the motivation to the consequence, where they could be held accountable and should be helped to understand what they did, rather than branding them as absolute villains, which I do not find that they are.
Mm-hmm.